Hi everybody, Mark here. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving long weekend. I've got an interesting couple of articles that I want to touch on today. The first one is from Bloomberg.com and it's dated May 18th, 2021. It's by Ari Alstetter, and I'll put a link to it in the description below. The headline reads, "The second largest country in the world is running out of land. Canadian dream of a house with a yard is becoming unaffordable as real estate prices surge and space to build run short." So it's interesting. As a Canadian, got a lot of land, but of course you can't, infrastructure-wise, homes are being built in the major centers. It's pretty clear that cities like Toronto and Vancouver just continue to grow and grow. Calgary, actually all the major, let's say, dozen or 15 major centers in Canada do continue to grow. I think there's pretty good evidence of that. It says, Canada's housing market is running hotter than just about anywhere else in the world, but despite the anxiety about irrational bidding wars and fears of the bubble bursting, what's fundamentally driving it is a worsening imbalance between supply and demand. Buyers want large homes, but increasingly can't have them because there isn't enough space in and around the major cities where people work. The world's second biggest country by land mass is effectively running out of space, and that has Canada on a course for a reckoning. The dream of a detached home and a piece of land, which generations of Canadians have taken for granted, and which continues to entice new immigrants, may soon be out of reach in the places where people want to live. That could force an expansion of the idea of home to include condos and rentals, potentially transforming how the middle class does everything from raising families to saving for retirement. Running out of land in Canada is a relatively recent phenomenon compared to Europe or Japan or other parts of the world, said Robert Hogue, an economist at Royal Bank of Canada. I think that for future generations, home ownership is going to look a lot more European, for example, than it does today. In Canada, buying a home has long been seen as the surest path to middle class security. Canadians on average live in some of the biggest houses in the world and post higher rates of home ownership than in the UK or France or even the US. The pandemic has put an even bigger premium on backyards and extra space. Nearly 60% of home sales last year in 18 communities in and around Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and Ottawa were for single-family detached houses, according to data compiled from local real estate boards by Bloomberg News. Only about a quarter of the sales in these places were for apartments. But when you look at what has been built in these same cities and their nearby bedroom communities over the last decade, the percentages are exactly reversed. 60% of new housing stock is apartments, and just 25% detached houses, according to government data compiled by Bloomberg. That mismatch has forced desperate bidders to vie for an increasingly constrained supply of single-family homes. In 2020, Canada's benchmark home price gained almost 15%, with only Luxembourg posting a bigger increase, according to data from the Dallas Fed. And they've got a very interesting graph here. I can't show it, but I can give you a bit of an insight here. Bought in 2020 and built over the last decade. Places we're very familiar with. Bought in Toronto, Ontario, over 50% detached homes. Built, 25% of the new builds were detached homes. Apartments bought in Toronto in 2020, 25%. However, built over the last decade in Toronto, 53% of the new builds were apartments. Vancouver is again similar. They're all follow the same trend. Detached homes purchased in 2020 about 28% of purchases built, less than 25%, 23%. Apartments purchased in Vancouver, just under 50%, and built, 54% of new builds were apartments in Vancouver, BC. A little surprising, Montreal, the number of apartments built in Montreal in the last decade is approaching 75% of the new builds. However, purchases in 2020 in Montreal, Quebec, were over 50%, 52% of all purchases were detached homes. So, and that the sources for that are Statistics Canada, Canadian Real Estate Association, Quebec Professional Association of Real Estate Brokers. Still, developers obviously aren't responding. They are building more apartments. Why? I suppose density makes more sense. Perhaps they're getting incentives from the local governments. It's really an interesting shift. And the other thing that ties into this, and I'll refer to another article, is Calgary. This is really interesting. In Calgary, and this is posted yesterday. This was posted yesterday on CBC. And it says, what does the future hold for Calgary's empty office towers? After a year and a half out of the office, many Canadians aren't ready to go back to work, they say. They might not ever be ready. Now, just as an aside here, when I was in the motorcycle business, many of my customers were of the demographic of the 45 to 65-year-old. That seems to be the buyer profile for the most part of motorcycles. Don't want to go off on too much of a tangent. Of course, Harley Davidson's trying to fix that, but that's for another story. The interesting thing is many of the customers that I spoke with talked about not going back to work. Now, this is in the Ottawa area. And so this is really interesting. I mean, Calgary has a history of boom-bust cycles when it comes to the oil patch. And I think the combination of what we've been going through the last 18 months is doubly affecting that, because of course oil prices are down as well. So this article from CBC is saying that roughly 1/3 of offices in the city's core have emptied out since the price of oil crashed in 2015. Downtown vacancy would be, they're estimating it at, and this would be unprecedented, 34% vacancy. They're even saying, which could be a North American record for a major city. So, what does it all mean? In Calgary, they're talking about changing the use from office space to residential space. Now, I mean, that's easier said than done. That's a big undertaking, particularly because, you know, an office is not designed with multiple bathrooms. They're designed with common bathrooms and, of course, plumbing and, kitchens and things like that. I mean, these are major costly renovations. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. But for myself and for people that I deal with here in Eastern Ontario, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in Ottawa. Ottawa, of course, I would say it doesn't take rocket scientists to figure out that our major landlord is the federal government. And for the last 18 months, a huge percentage of federal employees have been working from home. And they've gone as far as to completely set them up with offices, and all sorts of IT support and things like that has gone into making it secure to do all types of work from home in every level of government. So it'll be really interesting to see how they bring people back, if they bring people back into an office environment, if people want to. Again, just anecdotally, I don't know the details of how much space they gave up and exactly, their reasoning, but I think one could conclude that Shopify, very, very big company here based in Ottawa, they moved out of their tower downtown. That was I believe that was last year, to look that up. They vacated the space. People were working from home, and they had to sublease the space. So, and that's in prime property downtown Ottawa. So let me just see here. I need a producer to look this stuff up. Hey Jamie, look that up. Yeah. So this was August of last year. Shopify set to vacate 170,000 square feet on Elgin Street at their headquarters. Quite interesting. So if anyone has any thoughts on this, comments, let's get a discussion going. Put your 2 cents worth in the comments, and I'd be really interested to know what people think is going to happen in their city as well, whether it be Toronto or Vancouver or Montreal or Calgary or Winnipeg. What's happening in your city? Let me know, and I'll put links to these articles in the description below. Thanks a lot. Good to see you. Take care.